a biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Your host today is Wendy Francis, standing in for Neil Johnson. I'm speaking now with the Reverend Dr. Dan Anderson. It sounds very important, but he's a great guy, so I'm going to just call him Dan. I could tease him and actually call him Reverend Dr. Dan, and he probably wouldn't like it, but anyway. Listen, Proverbs 14:34 says this. It says, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people. And, you know, we talk about verses like that, and it causes Christians to pray that God will raise up righteous leaders. And that's particularly the case, I guess, in the lead up to a federal election such as what we're doing right now. And I hear people in churches bemoan the lack of godly leaders. But on the other hand, there are not many who actually put their hand up to be those leaders. And I wonder if anyone listening today has ever considered running for political office or a public position. And perhaps you have, but you've dismissed it as being a bit too hard or as being out of reach. Well, Reverend Dr. Dan Anderson, he's the director of the Lauchlan Macquarie Institute. It's situated in Murrumbateman. It's just outside Canberra. It's a beautiful spot. They have some great places to eat and some beautiful wineries. But LMI's mission is to raise up an Australian network, really, of wise Christian leaders, and it's particularly for politics and culture. They want to raise up these leaders who are biblically faithful, they're culturally intelligent, but they're also positively engaged for the common good. So Dan is well placed to speak on this question that I've just asked. And Dan, we are approaching a federal election. We need good leaders in our nation. If someone is listening this morning and they feel that God is challenging them, or perhaps challenging someone close to them, a mum or a dad who know their child is also being challenged in this way, being challenged to run for office sometime in the future, how should they be preparing themselves right now?
Thanks, Wendy. It's delightful to be with you today. And as you say, we're in an important time where our attention is a bit more focused on politics and the quality of our leaders at the moment. I think there are four key things that you can see in Scripture that we look for in the qualities of our leaders, particularly our political leaders. The first is accountability. The second is sound judgment. The third is a genuine love for neighbours. And the fourth is a bit harder to understand, but maybe what I would call a sense of dual citizenship, belonging both to our earthly community, but also our citizenship in heaven. And I think those four things, and we can unpack them a little bit together, are the kinds of qualities that we need to find in our leaders, and that if we're looking to be leaders, that we need to be cultivating in ourselves and growing in.
So how did this come to you, Dan? Like you've obviously done with the titles before your name. What sort of training or what sort of inspiration has led you to where you are right now?
Sure, yeah. No, I've done some postgraduate study. That's where the doctor bit comes from. Yeah. Don't ask me to kind of take your appendix out, but I can tell you a lot about philosophy and ethics. So I did a PhD thinking about the ethics of forgiveness several years ago, and the reverend part of that comes from the fact that I've worked as a minister in the Anglican Church in Sydney, and have had the privilege of pastoring God's people. Yeah.
So one of the problems that I think people are looking at their leaders and looking at MPs, they don't have a good reputation. So when you ask where people are on the scale of being trusted, one of the high ones is actually paramedics. That's interesting because I have a granddaughter who is a paramedic, and I was at one of her ceremonies that they were having, and the commissioner for the ambulance said, he challenged the ones who are graduating, and he said to them, we have a very high reputation. Why is that? Why do people trust paramedics? And he paused and he allowed there to be a bit of a pause while people thought about it. And I was thinking of all sorts of reasons why people would have a trust for paramedics. And he said, the reason is because of who has gone before you. So he was like saying, you've got to actually keep that reputation by being those people who people trust. The reason why you're trusted is because of who's gone before you. So now when we're looking at our political leaders, do you think that's one of the problems, that we have seen broken promises going before us? And so when we look at our leaders today, there is a lack of trust. Is that one of the problems because of the history that we've seen?
I think that certainly could play a part in it, although I would say that there's at least two different things that are going on there. One is the reality of the people who go into politics, and the other is the perception of them that we get through the media. And so sometimes our problems and our lack of trust there comes because we don't actually know the people themselves very directly. What we know is the presentation of them that comes through the media, where there's a real emphasis on shining the spotlight on the weaknesses, or even distorting those things and promoting conflict. But on the other hand, you're right. Like there's a reality to broken promises in the past and the kind of leadership that's happened. I think one of the things that came out of that paramedic story that you just told for me is the reality that people trust people who put their personal lives on the line in some way for them, and are willing to do that consistently, and you can see a sort of obvious self-sacrificial commitment to others. And I think there are politicians that are like that. Sometimes it's hard to see that, but that's the kind of thing that we're looking for: people who are willing to genuinely put themselves at a disadvantage for the sake of other people's good. Yeah.
So you direct the Lauchlan Macquarie Institute. So I worked for many years with the Australian Christian Lobby, and I would have politicians contact me quite regularly, and I've had to get in touch with you after their phone call saying they're looking for a particular person to work in their office. Does LMI have any alumni that would be available? So the alumni from the Lauchlan Macquarie Institute are highly sought after. Why is that, and what sort of thing happens at the Lauchlan Macquarie Institute?
Well, I think one of the reasons is what I was just talking about, that the reality is that our political system tends to recruit people through the sort of young Liberals, young Labor Party type people they join at a university level or at a local branch, and people who become staffers come out of that system. And often what that means is that the person who's a staffer is really there because they want their boss's job. Right? They want to climb the political ladder and get into politics themselves, which means that under pressure at times, they're not necessarily there with the best interests of their boss at heart. They're there with their own kind of career in the back of their mind. My hope, and I think this is true for people coming out of LMI, is that they're motivated by a genuine Christian desire to serve people. They have an interest in politics, and for some of them, they would like to have a career there. But that bigger sense of belonging to the Lord and having a self-sacrificial desire to do good for others means that they're just good workers. They work hard. They work for the interests of the people that they're working for, and they do that with, like I say, I think a demonstrated integrity over time. And I think that's a really unique and beautiful thing.
It's not available for everybody. I know that there are people, you have to apply to be part of the Lauchlan Macquarie Institute. Can you explain how somebody would want to look at being in one of the next intakes, for instance? Yeah,
we try to be quite selective. We only take small groups of people at a time. Our core thing that we do is run a 3-month training program, and it's a residential program in Canberra, in Murrumbidgee, just outside of Canberra. We invest a lot of time and energy and people into those programs, and so we don't just kind of fling the doors open. The way that we do that is we invite people to send us, first of all, a written application. You can do that through our website. That's lmi.org.au. And then we go through an interview process where we get to know people and we talk to people's referees and pastors and churches and things like that as well. We're not looking just for kind of classic political types either. We don't want a whole bunch of young law students or something like that, although those people can do really well in politics. We've taken people who are electricians and tradies and all sorts of different kinds of people because we actually need a real diversity in our parliament of life experiences and skills. But we do need people who have the ability to use their minds and are willing to work hard and love the Lord. And those are the things that we're looking for. So when is the next intake, and is there still room for people to apply? Yeah, the next intake is filling up pretty quickly. The program will start at the end of November 2025 and run through to the end of February. And our applications are open for that now. So you can apply anytime now. We tend to close the applications around about 6 weeks before the start of the program, and then we try to we select out of all the different applicants that we've had to create a cohort together. But the earlier you apply, the better for us in terms of being able to get to know you a little bit and talk to people in your referees and things like that.
Yeah, it's been amazing to me as some of the MPs have contacted me and said, we had somebody in our office from LMI. They've moved on, or they've moved up or something. Have you got anyone else from LMI? Because they do see the value. I know that there's also a time when LMI people work in an office as part of the 3-month training, but also the lecturers that you have are very, very high quality. Is there anything more you can say about the lecturers that come?
Yeah, I think that's one of the really unique and beautiful things about our program is that we bring people together to live together for those 3 months, which is a chance for us to work on our character as well as just our intellectual things. And then we fly in incredibly high quality lecturers from top universities and Bible colleges and places around the country to come and live on site with us while they're teaching. So they might be there for a week or a couple of weeks teaching their particular module. And you have the opportunity to interact with them around our classroom fellowship table, but you're also having lunches and meals with them, praying and worshipping with them, seeing them in the evenings. So it's a live-in intensive opportunity to learn from some of the best in the country.
So if we could raise up more people who loved God but loved the nation and wanted to serve the nation, what would that look like? What do you see as being an advantage in having more people focused on the good of the nation through a godly lens in our parliament? Can you answer that for me?
Well, I think Christians who take their faith seriously are being shaped by God's Spirit in a particular kind of way. They look like Jesus, and that means that they are people who believe in accountability. They're conscious of their accountability to the Lord, their judgment of them. All of those into hardworking people who are humble, who genuinely act for the good of others. Those are the kinds of things that we all, whether you're Christian or not, deeply want in our political leaders. So I think there's a translation between our convictions and our love for the Lord and the way that works out in our workplaces in politics. So that's one thing that we would really love, I think, more than anything else, isn't it?
It really is. And we're heading into the federal election. We will be looking at who to vote for. My encouragement always to people who are going in to vote is to contact all of your candidates that you're voting for and ask them some really important questions that you want to know, questions that you might even have heard raised even through Steve McAlpine today or Chris Cipollone. And I know you three are a bit of the Three Stooges, and not Three Stooges, that's not a good way to put you, but you are all mates, aren't you? You're mates together? Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. I really appreciate the work of those other guys. I haven't seen Chris for a long time, but I catch up regularly with Steve. Yeah, he's a really good bloke.
It must be encouraging for you to have people who are peers in that way and who are on the same page, but who you can also, like, one of the things I know that happens at LMI is this debate. Like you really encourage debate and being able to understand things from different and sort of tease things out. And I'm sure you get to do that a bit with people like Steve McAlpine.
Absolutely. And even more than that, I think it's the ability to encourage each other to keep putting the Lord first and loving him, having our eyes fixed on him. And that, to be honest, that's the thing I love about hanging out with Steve. We can all have all sorts of thoughts about politics and the issues of the day, but it's having where your gaze is fixed on the horizon that makes for good friendships and good travels. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, your parents, as you know, have been good friends of mine for many years, so it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining our program. That website is lmi.org.au. Dan Anderson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Wendy. Great pleasure.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.